Before it was much more outward, looking outward to see what the trends were, to see, whereas now as an artist, as a fine artist, it's much more inward. How am I feeling? What's important to me? What brings me joy? What am I troubled by? And what do I want to express? So it's very different, and I've had to work very hard not to go with that old mechanism.
She is an artist and painter who put aside a successful commercial art career to focus on works that empower diversity and humanity.
Her art is now in private collections throughout the United States and around the world.
Debbie Taylor-Kerman gets arty with us on today's episode.
My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of.
Hi, Debbie Taylor-Kerman. Melinda Buckley had posted about your show in Harlem, and I was so taken by your work, by the textures, the subject matter. I couldn't wait to talk to you about it. So I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
Where are you from?
I'm from Scotland. I was born in Glasgow, moved to the suburbs of Glasgow, and then went to college in London, and now have lived in New York 34 years and lived in Harlem 19 years. So I've actually now lived in Harlem just as long as I lived in Scotland.
Oh, wow. That's very cool.
Wow.
Do you like it up in Harlem? I love Harlem. So.
I do. I fell in love with it as soon as I came up here. Yeah.
Where are you?
I'm right in central Harlem. So, sort of round about Lenox Avenue and 25th
nice.
Street. Yeah.
Yeah, it's changing all the time there. It's
in
fascinating.
the 19 years that we've been here, it's incredible the changes that have been made. So some good, some not so good, but mostly, for the most part, good.
How have you changed in the past 19 years?
Oh Lord, a lot. I got old. Hopefully matured, raised two boys. My boys were young when we first came here. So my boys went to public school here in Harlem. I, kind of had a business, and I was a commercial artist for many years, really all the time that I lived here. And it was really during the pandemic that I sort of finally pursued my dream of creating fine art. So
what about a commercial artist? What is a commercial artist?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, first of all, I came here. I was a textile designer, so that's how I came. I asked to come and work in a design studio in the garment district. So I created patterns for fabrics, and that was what I was trained as in art school, or what I specialised in. And
was that back in the day? That was you used graph paper and filled in.
No. My studio, the studio that I belonged to was called London Portfolio, and we did a lot of really creative work. It was mostly British designers that actually worked, and we did very creative work. And then we had a department that was mostly Chinese and Korean artists who actually made our funky designs into repeat patterns for fabrics. So we did all the more conceptual work, so. And then once I had my first kid, I really didn't want to be working ridiculous hours in the garment district. So, and also I felt that if I was going to go up the ladder, it would have to be a lot more commercial, where I was much more interested in the actual artwork. So I had started doing things like more illustrative work, and I went to there's a big show called the Surtex show, and it coincides with the stationery show, where it's at the Javits Centre, and they do greeting cards and wrapping paper and all that. So I actually
went to that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go. So I went with my portfolio, and I made lots of connections. Fortunately, people liked my work, and I started then doing work for greeting cards, and mostly just greeting cards at that point. And then some of the companies that I was working with, instead of giving a flat fee, said we do a royalty. And then I realised that this was a business that was kind of untapped at that point. So I began to license my artwork on many different products. So I could do a snowman for a greeting card, and then it could also be licensed on a wrapping paper, on dinnerware, on a Christmas ornament, on a popcorn tin, and it ended up for me being a pretty lucrative business for quite a few years. So, it became very competitive towards the end, and my at the beginning, my competitors were my fellow artists, but it actually became more brand names. So famous people then began branding their name on different products, like in the dinnerware. Dinnerware was my biggest kind of client, but it became people like big designers like Kate Spade got their own line.
I knew you were going to say Kate Spade.
Yeah, and then also famous people like Kim Kardashian and all that. They all started marketing themselves and branding themselves on different products. So it became a very difficult place. It was like a small market with lots of sharks trying to get a bit of the pie, sort of thing, So, but it was a great and wonderful period in my life. It was a great thing. So.
What does it mean to put your stuff on dining wear and on that kind of, like, how do you do that?
Well, I had a licensing deal. So there's my first licensing deal was a company called Sakura, who then were bought up by a bigger company called Oneida. And Oneida are one of the biggest companies in the dinnerware market. So then Oneida would license my artwork, and then they would do all of the manufacturing, and then they would sell their work to their clients, anywhere from Kohl's department store to Target to smaller companies like Dillard's, and I would get a royalty. So if the thing did really well, which I had some patterns that did incredibly well, like I had the best-selling dinnerware in Kohl's, Christmas dinnerware in Kohl's for 8 years.
Wow! So, is your name on the plate?
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Wow!
Yeah.
What does the pattern look like?
It's for snowmen. If
I love that you're just shrugging your shoulders. It's just for snowmen.
It was a very lucrative thing, and it was wonderful, and I was really grateful for it. And I had some really great things. Like I had a whole end cap in Target. I had a Christmas tree in Macy's. Wow. It was an incredible experience for me. And it was where I was meant to be at that time.
But did Oneida say we need, bring us like 12 examples of things you might want on a plate, and then we'll decide which one we like? Or did you, was it an assignment, or they just went through your catalog and said,
well, I had a portfolio, but sometimes they would ask me and say a specific thing like, oh, we need, like with Kohl's, for example, like they chose these 3 different snowmen, and you have to do it in 4s because everything's sold in 4s, and the really is either dinnerware is 8 or 12 or 6, so I needed another snowman. So the guy it's a guy called Jeff Grinspan, who is a wonderful friend of mine. He was actually the art director in Sakura at the time that then became Oneida, and he sort of said to me, I think these would be great. Could we maybe add a 4th snowman? So something like that would happen. But then once I had a lot of success with Kohl's after 2 years, they said, okay, let's build on this. Can we do pairs of snowmen? And, so it can work like that, or else it can work that, they take it from my portfolio. And oftentimes they'll take it from the portfolio, but then they'll ask you to expand on it or change the colors or whatever. So
it's so interesting that you, for so many years, as an artist, you had an assignment. Mm-hmm. Right? You had an assignment. Mm-hmm. And now you have to give yourself the assignment. Yeah,
that's the biggest change. I mean, really, what you're doing as a commercial artist, you're using your voice to interpret someone else's voice. And sometimes the other voice wasn't necessarily assignment, but it was a trend. So like the commercial art world is very trend orientated, so each season you can see it, whether it's in fashion, whether it's like, that's how the commercial world works, because they're wanting people to buy things all the time. So you have to change, they have to develop, so for me, it was often trend based, so you like, it could be a color trend, it could be a theme trend or whatever. So, and I was very good at that. Like which is defect to character, but it helped me at that time, was that I'm such a people pleaser. So I'm really good at, like, you give me an assignment and I'll do it. So for me, I think the big missing element of not creating fine art was I was too terrified to use my own voice. I had been so accustomed to pleasing people, to meeting the trend, meeting the market. So I think it took me to be in my 50s to be able to say, okay, I'm ready to use my voice. I don't think about trends. I don't, like, if I'm about to work on a new, like when I have a solo show now at Heath Gallery in New York City in Harlem. And when I was working towards all of the paintings for that show, if you were working towards something as a creative in the commercial art world, you would look at what your success was and try to build on that success, even though the element of it has to be new and inspiring as well. Whereas when I was working on the solo show for Heath Gallery, it was just purely, what do I need to do? What do I want to express? What is coming from my heart? Where is my heart right now? So there's a lot of inward stuff. Like before, it was much more outward, looking outward to see what the trends were, to see. Whereas now, as an artist, as a fine artist, it's much more inward. How am I feeling? What's important to me? What brings me joy? What am I troubled by, and what do I want to express? So it's very different, and I've had to work very hard not to go with that old mechanism.
So when you're thinking of an idea for a show, what are the things other than textures? Because it seems like now when I'm thinking about it makes so much sense that your textiles, because so much of your pieces actually look like they have textiles, right?
Yes.
What is it that happens for you that triggers that spark or whatever? Do you know what that is?
Well, right now it's kind of fine nuances that kind of take me further, I'd say that the biggest thing that I need to express is just about the beauty of diversity. I think having lived in New York City for 34 years, where I grew up in Scotland was very homogenous. It's pretty different now, but at that point it was just all like white people, and the big difference is whether you were a Catholic or a Protestant, Yeah. So to me, and I've always been, I come from a very working class family. My parents both grew up in poverty in Glasgow. So, I'm very much about a champion for the underdog, and I my thing is about equality, and, but I find that I need to, or where I'm at right now is about expressing the beauty of diversity. The story of oppression isn't my story to tell. That's not my story, because I'm a very privileged white woman, But my story is I've lived in New York City. I've experienced being in a very diverse neighborhood where, for the most part, we're living in peace, So right. I think with the way the country has become, especially since Trump began his venture to where he is now, the message has been about pitting people against each other and having scapegoats, and so that is very much against who I am. And so I think I'm very much driven to express the opposite of that, about how beautiful diversity is. So I have been in many different kind of small nuances expressing that through my work from the beginning. Like the very first kind of collection of work I ever did was about, it was a friend of mine who is a Muslim, Black, and wears a scarf. After Trump got into power, she expressed how terrified she was just on the streets in the subway, because she just felt that she was a target, And she didn't wear a hijab, it's just a scarf. And so I immediately just wanted to just show the beauty, and that we should be respecting people regardless of where they're from, who they choose to worship. Or so I did a series of women, and mostly women of colour, in scarves in different forms. And so it's always been something. And then the next collection I did was, we went into lockdown, and my father died of COVID right at the very beginning.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. And he was in Scotland, and I was here, and I couldn't go home for the funeral. I mean, it was a nightmare. Gosh. And, we were all in lockdown, and I was in a very dark place. I was in a really dark place. And I ended up, there's kind of story to it, because I had done this series of paintings, that first series of paintings, and I still wasn't taking it seriously. And I heard my dad's voice when I was lying on my couch, kind of depressed. I heard his voice in my ear saying, "Put your paintings on the wall, hen,"
Oh.
And so I did, and I put the paintings on the wall, and I began to see the value. And then all of a sudden I just got this, because I was going out every night at 7:00 banging my pots and pans, and I was actually seeing my fellow neighbours going out and going to work in Whole Foods, or going to work in like the schools and whatever, the hospitals. And so I did a series of like it was really mostly people of color that were essential workers, and that was my next collection. So fast forward to the latest collection that I did for this solo show. My inspiration came from knowing, as I started it at the beginning of the year, because the show opened in April, and I knew that the first time Trump came into power, I went into a very dark place, and I sort of made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to let him steal my joy. I'll still work like crazy and do everything I can and march and, resist, but I can't. And then I will also oppose what he does, So my new collection of work was really colourful. I really made a concerted effort to make joyful colours.
Oh, that's nice.
And there's a lot of transgender people in my paintings, this recent lot of paintings, and a lot of gender fluidity that you can't even really tell. Is it, so a lot of things that are current, like there was the things about like anti-drag queens, RuPaul's Drag Race is one of my favourite, most joyful things, it's like, and so I have a lot of drag queens in the paintings too, so it's whatever's going on in the moment, but I think the baseline for me is just, for now, the expression of the beauty in our beautiful, diverse world, so.
Wow, I'm so moved by this story. I can't even. What I don't know anything about the art world. What happens when you have a solo show? I'm in the theater world where a solo show is somebody bears their soul and tells you about a horrible experience in their life. This is different. What? Thank God. What is, what do you like? What do you hope to get? Like, I mean, I'm assuming an artist wants to sell their work. Mm-hmm. And then it's
not
like,
for plates, not
for plate, no snowmen.
For people to hang on their walls.
And then you wanna mount this show somewhere else, and then somewhere else, and somewhere else. Like, what? How does it all work?
Oh, it's a very complicated, layered.
Oh,
in
good.
All honesty,
that makes me not feel bad for not knowing how it works. Okay.
I think it depends on the artist and what their objective is. I think every artist has their own thing. I mean, I think there's artists that just don't care about selling anything, and
and like
theirs is just pure expression. There's other people that are churning it out, just to sell, and
Warhol.
Well, he's questionable, but it's I mean, and he made it cool to be that, but there's like people literally like that go to these big what do you call them, like cruise ships and stuff, and sell on cruise ships, and there's that kind of aspect. It's very commercial. Yeah. I just actually found out about that recently.
That's so bizarre.
And and then there's just it's a very difficult world, and it's a very, like most form of art, is very hierarchical as well. Excuse, I can't say the word.
I could not
It's
even
a hierarchical
spell it, so.
word. It's there's a lot of snobbery in the art world, I think, and that was one of the things that kept me from it, because I was working class. I felt that who I've got nothing important to say, and who do I think I am, and also being from working class, I needed to make money. It's like, so it wasn't even a thought that I could do fine art, because I think there's that concept. It's like jazz singing, poetry, and fine art. Like, who the hell makes a living doing those? So
yeah, Nancy, who does that?
I know, right?
but there are people that do, and I think ultimately what you have to do is just follow your heart, So that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out right now. Like, where do I belong? And, it's hard to know. Do you belong in this kind of gallery, or do you belong in that kind of gallery? Or I've been very fortunate that over the last year, I've had everybody come to me, so I've actually never written to a gallery yet. I work with two different, I'm about to work with a third gallery. So there's different ways to work. You can work like the gallery, Heath Gallery, like they're not representing me. They're just showing my work for this period of time. And that'll be it,
And do you pay a fee to
Yeah.
have your stuff there?
Yeah, well, no, I don't pay a fee to have my stuff. Like there is galleries like that where you can pay them and they'll show your work. I've never done that. They just take that. Most galleries, it's like they take a percentage.
Right. Of the
Because
sale.
yeah, because they're giving you the space and they're bringing their clients in, and they've got the brick and mortar sort of space where they've got people coming in all the time and all that. So.
And it's New York real estate, so they have to pay the bills.
Yes, exactly. So that's this gallery. Heath Gallery is just for this show, whereas I have a gallery in Santa Fe and I have a gallery in Tampa, Florida, and I'm going to be working with a gallery in Boston who are going to represent me in that area, and I'll be giving them paintings and then they'll be hopefully selling them in that area, so that's another way to do it. Ultimately, I think a lot of people, there's a thing called blue chip galleries that are kind of like the top of the hierarchy, and that's when your work starts to sell for $1 gazillion, so I have no idea how you get to that level, and I don't know. I think I'm where I'm at, and I just have to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's why I just keep doing it.
Do you ever sort of go back to your other life and like you're working on something and think, actually, this would look really good on a scarf, or I can see this on curtains. No.
And I actually I've had people ask me, like I had a German company approach me and ask if they could put my work on rugs. I've had
rugs.
Wow.
I've had quite a few things, but it doesn't interest me. It's just,
You don't want to do a snowman rug?
Been there, done that.
I'm realizing now that like I have seen artists work and like just very casually said, "Oh my God, I would love that on a t-shirt," and not realizing that like maybe that's taboo, or maybe maybe it's insulting.
I don't think so. It's just not where my head is landing right now. So I think I'm so into what I'm doing that I just don't want to focus away from that. I mean, it's very hard to make a living doing what I'm doing, so most artists tend to teach, and this is a thing that I'm sort of, I get asked to teach a lot, and so far I've said no, and I'm considering one thing right now, but it's
why do you say no?
Because I think all my life I was I like what we started with. I was working for other people essentially, and then I was a mother and I raised my kids, and like they were before me, and so then I became an empty nester like 4 years ago, and it was just like woohoo, it's time for Debbie, it's Debbie time,
right.
And I think teaching is definitely, you have to be given a certain amount, but I know that there's a lot that you get in return as well, so, but for some reason it's just, I keep saying no.
Yeah.
Well, you're in a space where you're in your artist space right now.
That's exactly what it sounds like. You are in Debbie land, and that's where you're going to stay, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
And you can teach forever, right? There's plenty of years left to teach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a question about the art world, because I know there's the whole gallery circuit. And there's all that going on in the different levels of galleries. What about the art shows that, like, when you're going, like my sister lives in Sarasota, and every time I go, there's a huge art show in Sarasota where everybody's showing their artwork. Mm-hmm. Do you do those kinds of things? Is that even any interest to you?
Yeah, well, the very first time I ever showed my work was like there's a show called The Other Art Fair, and there's one in Brooklyn. There's 6 around the world. I think there's one in Sydney, one in London, Chicago, Brooklyn, Dallas, and LA. And the one in Brooklyn is very competitive, and it's a wonderful show. And I actually went. So I had started really painting full time, just to segue into that. Like after I painted those essential workers, so this is in 2020, I decided to have courage with sweaty hands, like put it up on Instagram, some of the paintings, which I had never shown anyone the paintings. And immediately people started to want to buy them, and so that was like, wow, And so I had put them on my personal page. So then I got like a professional artist Instagram page, and I started to kind of do that more. And I really seen that that I had an audience, that people were really responding to my work, because I had no clue. And so, and at that point we were all still in lockdown, so so after a couple of years, I knew that I wasn't ready to approach any galleries or anything. So it was sort of the most empowering thing that you can do for yourself is maybe to do one of these art fairs just to sort of see what it was like in person,
Test the temperature of the water.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was 2023. I applied to get into the Brooklyn Art Fair. Unfortunately, I was very fortunate because it is hard to get in, and I got accepted. So I think that was May 2023. And so this was like the first person, because we were still, because, my dad had died of COVID, we were and my husband was very worried about it. And, it was really, we were living really in a kind of isolated bubble. So it was the first time I'd really put myself out there in a very social situation. But it was also the opportunity to see people's reaction to my work in person, because I had never seen that before. So I exhibited, it was May of 2023, and I exhibited for the first time at the Other Art Fair in Brooklyn, and it was an incredible experience.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely incredible. And I actually sold a lot of paintings. I sold 14 paintings, and people loved my work, and it was really, and it was also just engaging with people. And because I'm not a trained fine artist, I mean, I've been an artist all my life. I know about colour, I know about design, and I actually took this fine art class that was online for 3 months, and then I did it 4 years in a row. So I have, I had some experience, but I had never actually talked about my work. I had never really explained my inspirations. I had never really talked about, the subtle nuances that go on in your mind and your heart as an artist, and about your process, and so that was an incredible experience. So if anyone's starting out, I would absolutely say do an art fair. It's very self-empowering, because it's not driven by someone else, and you have to pay for it, and then you pay a small percentage as well, so But I was very lucky. I actually did it 4 times in a row. The first time I'm not going to do it is this May, because my son's graduating, and I've got a solo show right now, and it just didn't feel like the right thing to do. So, but I absolutely love doing them. You meet other artists, you meet people, and you talk about your work. I mean, it's like having an opening night at a solo show for 4 days, so.
It's a lot of work as well. Oh, sorry.
It is. It's a tremendous amount of work.
So you're lucky to have young people in your life because they help you with things, right? Technical things and social media things. How involved? You're blushing. How involved are they in that, if at all?
My younger son's been away at college the whole time. He went to college in 2021. So really at the start of this, he's been at college. My older son is here, and he has him and his partner have helped me the last 2 art fairs to set up, and my husband's been helped. Social media I've actually done on my own, and it's incredible. I know, and I'm not a technical person, and I have managed. There was an artist who had a big following way back in 2021. She did like a free week course on Instagram and stuff, and I did that, but believe me, I people think because I have quite a big following on Instagram, people are like, oh, what do you do? What's your secret and all that? I don't even have one of these professional lights. I don't have any app. I'm a by the seat of my pants kind of gal, and
That's so fantastic.
And for some reason it's worked.
Don't change a thing. Yeah.
So
do you have so full disclosure? I've done the Edinburgh Fringe Festival 6 times. I'll be going.
Things.
Yeah, and I go for the whole month. And I'll be
going,
you. And I'll be going again for a week actually this time around.
Nice.
So many reasons to go, of being exposed to art from around the world, of course. But the spirit of Scottish people is very welcome to a guy from Queens. And I also am fully convinced that the earth itself is magical. There are fairies and gnomes living in the ground. So it's like going to a spa. Unless you live there. I'm sure it's not the same if you live there, but very restorative.
Yeah.
So do you see yourself having a gallery showing in your homeland?
Wow, that's a great question.
Hey, Nancy! I had a good question.
I know. That's not something you ever thought of?
No, actually, no. And
you're blushing so hard. I feel like you have to do this.
I think, what's really hard is like, I prefer to work on wood. And so it would be really hard to have that amount of wood and to take that home, to ship it home.
Yeah.
But, I do work, when I work, sometimes I work, like right now I'm working on one 4 feet by 4 feet and one 4 feet by 5 feet painting. And, because they're so big, it's hard to ship, like, and work on pieces of wood that big. So I do work on canvas. So I could actually work and do canvas and then just roll it all up and then frame it when I got there. That's definitely a possibility. So yeah, maybe.
Hey! I can't wait to see your show next summer. So you are not taking, I'm picturing your mixed media stuff. You're not thinking ever of that being in a print version. It's meant to be on a 4x5 canvas.
Yeah, I get a lot of people asking me, do I do prints? Because, and I want my work to be accessible. And obviously, since I've started, the prices have gone up and up because, it's hard, especially when you're working with galleries, you're giving 50% away to like the gallery, So, I generally just do original pieces of work, but I do, and people have asked me, can you do prints, and it makes it much cheaper, but it's a whole other ball game, like trying to get color matching. And also, the shipping and handling is a lot of work, and I'm just like, for such a small amount of money, it's a lot of work. If I ever got to a position where I had a studio assistant, that's
a great assignment.
But how I've gotten around doing sort of more accessible work is like that's more like financially kind of for everybody, is like I'll do tiny wee pieces of work, and that makes it, but it just, prints are just, it's too much work.
I also think that's something that it doesn't cheapen it, because I think it's really important that people have something they can take if they love an artist. But I think that there's certain things about the work that you're doing that it really is something that needs to be in a gallery and hung. And it's not so much, I don't know. I feel like that's the kind of stuff like that the Met does in their shop, in their gift shop, or some of these places do, that maybe they do for a special thing. But I don't know. There's something about what you're doing that I just feel like it needs to be hung on a wall, framed on wood. Like there's just, it's so special that I almost feel like a print. I don't know. I just don't feel like it's a print.
I don't want to sound snobby about it, because I think it's a great thing for people that really don't have money and they can have nice art on their wall with prints and stuff. But for me as well, just my work is so textural and so like, my work is sometimes up to 10 layers on it, and even when you look at things on Instagram, I mean, on these wee boxes, you cannot see the depth of texture on, like, and so I think that would actually be hard to translate as well on a piece, so I mean, I had an open studio just before Christmas, and I ended up doing some work on just loose canvas and then mounting them behind photo mount paper. And I made them very accessible, like price-wise and stuff. And I sold some, but like I had some left. And then when the fires happened in LA, I just sort of put them on Instagram and I said, anyone want these here? $250, take it and I'll pay for the shipping. And, I ended up selling 4 or 5 of them and was able to donate all the money, so it's nice to have things that are, more financially able for everyone to have access to, but it's also it's a hard life being an artist trying to make a living.
Totally.
As we all know.
It's so much work. It's enough that you're doing all the work that you're doing as an artist, but then also to have to ship, to have to pack everything up, all of that work. That's a lot as well.
Yeah, it is.
Are you doing it all by yourself?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
And how big? Do you have a big studio? What's your studio?
I don't.
Like?
My studio. So we live in a townhouse in Harlem. We bought and gut renovated a house 19 years ago, and so it's a fairly small space. Like I'm in it right now. It's lovely. It's got a beautiful view of the Manhattan skyline. Yeah, great light. I have kind of French windows at the front. And but it's not that big. It's probably like about 14 feet wide, or even less maybe, by 15, So I had a commission last year. There's a hotel in Midtown Manhattan at 50th Street and Lexington Avenue called the Benjamin Hotel.
Yeah.
And they were doing, they did a gut renovation of their hotel. And so they were looking for an artist, and it was a big process, but somebody came to me and said, can they put my name forward? And I said yes, and so they ended up choosing me. So it was 2 7 feet by 7 feet paintings. Like that was the biggest I'd ever painted, and literally it took up the whole wall.
You're living with your art.
Oh my God, it was a challenge painting these. It was because literally the canvas actually, because you have to paint like a big selvage so that it can be wrapped over when it's stretched. And so my wall, it goes down in a slanted roof because we have solar panels on the roof. And so at the smallest part, it's only 7 feet. So I had it pinned and I had it flapped on the ceiling, the selvage, because it used up every space. But it was incredible. If it was any bigger, I wouldn't have been able to do it, So, but fortunately,
how'd you get it down the stairs?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. How'd you get it out?
Well, I pinned the canvas to the wall because they were doing the framing themselves. So I had pinned the canvas to the wall, and then once it was finished, it took 4 of us to take the pins off and roll the canvas up. And then I had to take them down to another room, and then I rolled them. You get these at Home Depot. You get these big cylinder cardboard things.
Yeah,
they're
very expensive. Those.
Well,
things,
yeah. Well, it's basically you're supposed. I had used them because I used to volunteer at my kids' school to do the stage sets for like build a stage set.
Yes, Debbie. All right.
And
now you're talking Pete's language.
Yeah. And I had used them to build pillars for The Sound of Music, and so I had remembered about them. So they're actually they're for builders to put cement in to make hollow cement for doing the grounds of like at the very beginning of building a house. So anyway, I put 2 of them together, and then it took 4 of us to wrap it around these cylinders. And then, we kind of took them in the car, and then I dropped them off at a place in Brooklyn, out in Greenpoint, I think it was, to get them framed.
So these were not 10 layers.
I was going to say.
There was about 10 layers in them, but
how did you know it was going to have the flexibility and not crack or peel? Or
acrylic is fairly forgiving, because acrylic basically it's called
it's rubbery, right?
It's glue. It's basically like Elmer's glue. I mean, it's called gloss medium, but it's basically a mixture of gloss medium and color, pigment color, so it's basically like acrylic is really like colored glue. So it's kind of got a lot of flexibility. It can crack, but it was kind of fairly fresh, and it was completely dry, but it was fine. And it was only going to be rolled for like a day or 2, because they were going to start framing it, so.
And there's no way that the rolling can change it at all.
I had read, I looked on YouTube, and people do it all the time. That's how people get away with not the big shipping charges is like they'll roll into a tube and then send it to a gallery at the other end of the country, and then they'll get someone to frame it there. Yeah.
Amazing. That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any control over the framing, or is it all that
No,
they
I didn't.
choose?
It was, their choice, and they did a great job. I mean, they really did a beautiful job.
You're not talking about the framing on the outside. You're talking about what the frame, canvas is being attached to.
Well, they framed it first on like on a, they stapled it probably to
Yeah.
a frame, and then they actually made a beautiful wood frame for the outside. So
Do you have to approve that? Do you have to approve that design?
I didn't have that. That wasn't part of my job. No, but they did an incredible job, and it looks incredible. If you're ever in Midtown, going just pop
I
in.
actually work. My day gig is around there, so I'm actually going to go.
Okay.
After I go to the Heath Gallery, though, because that's on my calendar.
Nancy, you've got to take selfies at all. I'm going to be Debbie's kid now. You have to take selfies at all these places, and then we'll use that to build up to announcing Debbie's episode.
Definitely. Yeah, it's funny because a friend of mine who does wallpaper, she creates all this wallpaper. She and I were looking. I was like, you have to see this artist. She's amazing. And we're like, when can we go? So we've been trying to plan the trip to go because I I flipped over it. I just think they're so exquisite, and I'm excited to share.
The right thing happened. Your art was out there on social media. Someone shared it, and then somebody like Nancy saw it and fell in love with it, and now here you are.
And thank God Melinda was able to bring us together.
Yeah, that's so nice.
And you, Debbie, are the first person in our 40 episodes that neither of us know the person we're talking to.
Yeah, that's true,
that's
actually.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You're breaking new ground, Debbie. Hey, thanks for checking us out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.